All right, everyone, let's go ahead and kick things off. First, I want to thank you all for joining this webinar. This is the last in our fall release series. I'm really excited about it. We've titled it Leveraging Yext Advanced Functionality to Build a Custom Experience. What I'm really excited about for this webinar is that we've added a ton of advanced functionality over the past year for our technical users, for our power users, for developers, and we're going to get to see some of the amazing things that the Yext platform can do. I'll say that this is going to be very developer focused on a lot of the functionality that we're going to showcase, but even if you're not a developer, you're going to get to see some of the amazing things that the platform can do and different ways that you can manipulate your data, show great experiences. And we've got really the two best people that you would want on this webinar here, which I'm super excited about. We've got Max Shaw, who's our SVP of product, and we've also got Aaron Pavlik, our developer evangelist. So they're both experts in getting into the code. They're both experts in the strategy of the platform, and they both have really great opinions on pop culture movies. So we're going to go through what they think about some of the latest movies here as well. First, we're going to kick off with the Yext platform vision. Max is just going to really quickly set the stage by talking through the Yext platform, what we're looking to do, how we can help transform your business. And then next, we're really just going to get into the demo. Max is going to give a little bit of almost a table of contents of what we're going to go through over the course of the webinar. And then Aaron and Max are just going to go in and build a live demo and talk you through that. And then we'll just wrap up by talking about some of the amazing documentation that you can check out, different resources that you can use, and we'll finish up with a Q&A with Max and Aaron. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop those into the Q&A, and we'll make sure to get as many as we can answered at the end of this. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Max.
That's quite the intro, Nick. So yeah, before we get into it, I always like starting these webinars by just reiterating kind of what we're trying to do as a platform, and then we'll get into a demo. Overall, what Yext does is that we help you collect, organize, and then deliver amazing digital experiences. That's really at the core of what we do. The types of digital experiences that we support has evolved over the years, starting with just our listings product, and then our pages product, and then our search product, and we'll have a lot more coming out over the next few years. But we want to help you deliver amazing digital experiences. And that starts at the content layer, making sure it's really easy to get all the content, all of the knowledge into a centralized place, which is what we call our knowledge graph. And then with that knowledge graph, we can deliver different types of experiences. Today, we're going to show a bunch of different use cases and cover a lot of the different products inside the knowledge graph. So if you look at the individual products or the different capabilities, next slide, Nick. Inside of our product, we have the knowledge graph at the center. That's our core content store. You can think of that as kind of a headless CMS, is really the way you can think about it. And then on top of that, we have reviews, listings, pages, and search. Connectors helps us pull in content into that knowledge graph. Throughout this demo, we're going to be highlighting connectors, knowledge graph, pages, and search. Those are the core pieces. And inside of those areas, we're going to highlight a few different features. One on the connector side, we're going to highlight pulling from API. So that will help us use pull in from this movies database. We're going to use functions. So throughout our platform, you can actually extend the platform with JavaScript code. So we'll show you how that works. We're going to build a knowledge graph. We'll show you what it's going to be in a second. We're going to be using a custom schema here with custom fields and relationships. And then finally, we're going to deliver a few different types of experiences. One is search, one is SEO optimized website. And then the third is kind of using this data inside of a mobile app. So we'll show content endpoints at the end. So with that, we're going to jump into it. Before we jump into building kind of this web experience, Aaron, can you show off kind of what we're going to build today?
Sure. All right, let me take control of the screen here. Yeah, so I've got some screenshots of what we're going to be building. So this is a search results landing page after doing a search for action movies. And then I'll be able to click on any of those results and it will navigate us to the SEO optimized landing page for that result.
Awesome. So this is YMDB, the Yext
Yeah.
database. I don't know why it's BD, but it's DB. It's the Yext movie database. This is our clone. And this will highlight just a lot of our functionality. If anyone hasn't checked out the new avatar, I was personally a big fan, although some people didn't like it. But we'll show a bunch of movies here, and then we'll show you how we built this website. So we're going to start by populating a knowledge graph. When you think about the Yext product, the first thing you always need to do is populate content into the knowledge graph. And so we're going to build some connectors that allow us to do that. So Aaron's going to walk through how we can get movies from this public database as he builds a connector. And then we're going to pull those into the knowledge graph. Then we're going to pull in some actors as well and show you how that flow works. So Aaron, why don't you take it away?
Sure. So the first step here is to, like Max said, grab some movies from a public API that you can sign up for. I believe it's called the movie database API. So I'm going to click on create connector, and then I'm going to pull from API. So on another screen here, I have the URL. So I'm going to grab that, paste it here, and I need an API key. So that is API key. And let me copy and paste my API key. When I paste that, I can hit pull, and I'm able to validate that that was successful, and I grabbed my first page of movies. So I'm not going to add pagination today, but in the future, I could come back and grab thousands of movies if I wanted to by changing the pagination control here. So next, I'm going to go to the response type. So it's going to be a list of objects, and that list is called results. So once I select that, I can go to selectors, and I can add default selectors. So this is really handy. I didn't have to do any manual configuration. It was the system was able to determine all the different fields in each object and map them to columns. Now, one thing I want to point out is that with this backdrop path and poster path, those are IDs of image URLs, but it's not the full URL, and that's not going to do me much good. So I'm actually going to use a built-in transform. So I'm going to do a find and replace. I'm going to replace this /. So I'm going to select the backdrop path and poster path. And I'm going to replace that / with a domain. So replace that with this, click apply. You can see that the color of those strings actually changed because now I have actual hyperlinks to images now, not just strings. The next transform I'm going to make is on genre IDs here. So these aren't going to do me much good. They're just numbers. They don't mean anything to me. I need to replace these numbers with actual genres like action and adventure. So we don't have anything built in to do that. So that's something a little more custom. But I've actually already uploaded a plugin to my account. So I'm going to use a function from that plugin to apply a transform and turn these genre IDs into actual genres.
So yeah, I can just walk through a little bit what's going on behind the scenes here. Right now, what Aaron's doing is building kind of a connector, which is really an ETL, right? We're extracting, we're transforming this data, then we're going to load it into the knowledge graph. As you could see, he was able to pull from an API, pull a bunch of different fields, one simple transform. And what we're doing right here is actually a more complex advanced functionality where we're actually running some custom JavaScript code. And so Aaron can show off what that code looks like. Before this webinar started, we uploaded this code into the Yext system. So this code you can see right here takes the genres and replaces the IDs with the names. So you can see at the top, it's replacing number 28 with action. This is completely custom code. This is not built into Yext, but with Yext functions, you can upload this code into the platform and then have the Yext system handle automatically running this at the right time. So we don't need to run this code ourselves. Yext is going to run this code under the hood. It's a JavaScript-based runtime. And so automatically that will replace all of the IDs with the genres. And so that's what you see right there. So this shows an example of one simple transform and then one more advanced transform using custom code. So this is a place where your developers can jump in and customize the functionality. Now, the final step Aaron has to do is map the data. So he's going to map these fields to the Yext knowledge graph. So he'll go through these fields and kind of map between them. As he goes through this, kind of try to think about how would you do something like this in your current system, right? In whatever tool you would use, whether it's your CMS or your current processes, what are the alternatives you have for pulling in data from an API, transforming it like we did, and then loading it into another system? The nice thing about the connectors framework inside of Yext is that you can do this all with very little code. There was a little bit of code that we did for the genres. Outside of that, it was entirely point and click. And so depending on what you're trying to accomplish, you can do a lot with just a few clicks of pulling in this data. Not only will we be able to pull in this data once, we could pull this in with frequency every hour, for example. We could layer on pagination or anything else like that. So there's a lot of flexibility here in order to pull in the data, transform it into the right format you want, and then load it into the knowledge graph. There's one more field he's creating here, the slug field. So this is kind of an embedded field where we're using the movie as a prefix, and then entity ID as kind of the slug itself. So that will be the end URL of our page. So now we can run this connector. And if we did this right, live demos are always a little risky, but we'll give it a shot. And this should load in the movies into the knowledge graph. So Aaron's running that right now. You can see we're creating some entities. It's running through. We've created 7 entities, 10. I think, what is this loaded? About 20 movies?
Yeah, it should be about 20.
Awesome. So now we can check out the knowledge graph and make sure that worked. And now we have these 20 movies. We have Avatar, The Way of Water, the sequel, which I loved. We also have Glass Onion sequel, which I didn't love. A little bit, maybe hit too close to home with the tech focus, but I thought the original was better. But we loaded in 20 movies. You can see those images loaded in as well. And then the genre is also loaded in. So now, Aaron, I also want to get the actors into the knowledge graph. So you want to run that other connector?
Sure. So yeah, we built this connector beforehand. Just want to make sure I added that slug field to actors as well. Make sure I save that. So let me just double check. Yeah, okay, we're good. Make sure I mapped it actually. Yeah, slug is mapped. Okay, so let me run that connector now.
And so this is looping through all the movies and pulling in, I think, the top 3 actors per movie. So this should populate the knowledge graph with a bunch of actors. These actors are going to be related to the movies via a relationship. So this is using our relationship functionality. In this case, it's a 2-way relationship. Actors linked to movies, movies linked to actors. And so that loaded in 56 new actors. And so we can see if those populated. Awesome. Then maybe you want to jump into one of the actors and show the relationship to the movies. So this is Antonio Banderas and his relationship. I guess he was in Puss in Boots. I've not seen Puss in Boots. Probably a good flick.
The voice of the cat, I believe.
The voice of the cat. Okay. So you can see how those related together. Then you can see the actors are also related to this movie. We have Antonio, Sama, and Harvey. Awesome. So now we have this knowledge graph built. First thing I want on this website is the ability to search this knowledge graph. And so let's build a search experience and show how that works.
Sure. So I'll go over to the search overview screen here and click Create Search Experience. We're going to call this YMDB, not BD. Okay, continue here, and just going to include actor and movie entities. So I'll click Create Experience. And just by clicking Create Experience, I almost have everything I need. I'm going to make a slight adjustment to my movies vertical. So I want to be able to search for action movies or adventure movies. So I'm going to add the genres field. Update fields and add that as an NLP filter. And when my users are typing in the search bar, I want them to see the option to select action movies or adventure movies. So I'm going to make one other change.
Here you see Aaron's actually editing the JSON configuration. Everything on our platform you can do by encode with often JSON configuration files, or you can do in a UI. So you really have that flexibility. If you want to update stuff programmatically via API, you can always do that. If you want to update via UI, you can also do that. So let's see if we can save this. Seems like we got a little warning at the screen. You want to try that one more time, Aaron?
Yeah, it still says saving though. So I'll refresh the screen, refresh the page here in a second. C_genres because it's a custom field type. So let's refresh the page, see what's going on. Okay,
like that
I
works.
think it did save, right?
Yeah, and then you want to see the show in the UI where you could also update that in query suggestions. So
Sure.
Aaron did in the code. You could also have done it via the UI. So if you go into the vertical prompts here and you go to the movies, you should be able to see the genre. So that's filled out. Now we can see if it's working.
So if I start typing, I get different suggestions here. So I'll select action movies. We'll go to the movie vertical.
I was taking a second to index.
Okay.
Give it a second. It's just taking a second to load in the data. Why don't we just give it a second? Why don't we jump into the building out the site and we'll come back to the search.
Okay, sure.
So yeah, next we want to get a actual SEO optimized site as well. So we have search getting indexed right now. So that should be ready to go in a second. We also want to build a full website around this as well. And so what we want to do is create a page per movie, a page per actor, and then maybe a home page and a search results page. And so we've written some of this code ahead of time, but Aaron will kind of do a quick walkthrough of what we have here.
Yeah, so I've written a couple templates. Actually, the first thing I'm going to do is go back to the platform. I'm going to go to the experience details here for search. I'm going to grab the API key that was generated for me and copy that. I have a component that I've already written here. It's in my page layout component. And I'm going to add my API here to enable search for the site. So I'll click save. And now I can start walking through some of the templates. So I have a home template. This will represent my home page. You can see that I've added the search bar. This is a handy component from Search UI React. It's a library I really enjoy using. I think it's really handy for adding search to both Yext Pages projects and other development frameworks as well. And I have a simple search landing page where once I search for movies, the search results will appear here, and I will be able to see action movies, adventure movies, etc. So let's see, we'll go through the movie template next. So right here, you have a stream definition. And basically I'm saying in this template, I'm saying for every movie in my knowledge graph, I want a different page. And for each of those pages, for each of those movies, I want to use these fields. So there's movie fields like name and the backdrop image of the movie, along with some related entities. So each movie has a list of actors. So I'm able to pull in those related actor entities as well. And then down in the actual template code here, this is where I will take the fields from my stream definition and render movies on the page. And the actor template works pretty much the same way. Another stream definition here where I'm pulling in information about each actor, and then also the related movies as well with the name and the movie slug, so that I can navigate between the movies and the actors back and forth. So I can get that running locally and show you what that looks like.
Awesome. So what Aaron's doing right here, this is local development. So this is what, for any developers on the call or for anyone who works with their web development team, this is the environment they would be using when they're working with our Pages product. And so he's spinning up a local dev server. And this allows you to test what the site's going to look like locally. And the general workflow we have for Yext is that, and this is very common in the industry, is that you do local development and then you push it all to a Git repository, and then we will automatically deploy that Git repository to production. So here we see our development server, and Aaron can show some of the pages on this server and show kind of what those look like.
Sure. So if we click on one of the movies here, so this should, if everything worked all right, this should look the way it did in the screenshot I showed before we got started here today. So before the webinar started, this entity didn't even exist in the knowledge graph, and we just in a few minutes we have a full-on landing page here in local development.
Awesome. So this is pulling in data from the knowledge graph and showing it locally. So now, Aaron, do we want to deploy this to production?
Yeah, let's do it. So I made one change. You'll see that I made one change, and that was to, well, wait, I should have, yeah, so let me make sure I'm in the right. Yeah, so I added this API key. Just double check I copy and pasted the correct key here. I know I did, but just double checking. Okay.
That looks right.
Yeah, so I'll add that, and I will add this commit. And push. So I've pushed changes to GitHub. If I come back over to the Yext platform here, I should be able to jump onto the pages screen and go to all sites. And I don't have any sites yet, so I'll create a new site. And I will connect my GitHub account. Call the site YMDB. Select my GitHub account. Select the YMDB starter, and I will deploy my master branch. So while this is loading, Max, what do you think about building a content endpoint?
Yeah, I think let's do that. So right here, what we're seeing is we're deploying our new Pages site. Overall, our Pages product has really a 3-step deployment process. First, we will pull all the stuff from GitHub that we just pushed it to. Second, we'll generate all the pages. So that's that page generation step. And then the third, as data updates in the knowledge graph, we're automatically going to update the page. So we'll show all that in a second. The other piece, though, that we want to jump into is building a mobile app. So for the web, we're just using the Yext Pages system. For a mobile app, imagine we have a mobile development team and they need an API that they can hit in real time to pull in this movie information. So that's what we're going to use a content endpoint for. So content endpoints are real-time APIs that you can hit client side. So in this case, via a mobile app that have really high performance and uptime. So it's going to load really quickly and will deliver an amazing experience in that mobile app. If we were to call this original API directly, you're going to run into rate limiting. It's going to be pretty slow. That initial API, the database we use, is not very fast. So here, this content endpoint will allow us to build a real-time consumer-grade API that we can hit from a mobile app in this case. We could also use this API to hit it from a chatbot or a voice skill or even another website if you wanted to. So he's choosing the fields that are going to be available on this content endpoint. One of the cool things is that you can choose relationships as well. So we can pull in related information. So we'll pull in a bunch of different fields, and some of these will be related to the actor's entity. And the cool thing about this is that you can pull in relationships and it's not going to impact how fast this API is. We do this all at index time rather than at query time. So even if you're traversing across multiple relationships, that content endpoint is still going to respond extremely quickly.
Yep, and I'm going to add ID as an index field. That will allow me to grab a specific movie whenever I call this API. So I'm going to save that content endpoint. And I've already got the API ready to go over in Postman. So here we've got the endpoint I've already created. I'm going to try to grab the avatar movie and let's see. Okay, there we go. And you can see a super fast response time as well.
Awesome. So that loaded in about 200 milliseconds, and which is a really quick response time. You can run it again, and you should get really high uptime. We're serving all this API statically. You can see now it's 60 milliseconds. On average, this takes about 100 milliseconds to return content. So really quick. That's globally distributed as well. So really good infrastructure to build on top of. So now we have a content endpoint. We have pages, and we have search. So let's jump back to search and see if that's working yet.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, that's pages. Let's go over to search, verticals. Let's try searching for action movies. Okay, there we go.
Awesome. Okay, so it's working now. So here are the movies. I see we just, okay. Yeah, this looks good. I personally think, as I mentioned before, Avatar: The Way of Water is a pretty good movie. Can we get that up to the top of the search results?
Yeah, no problem. So we'll edit the results here. And we will have the option to reorder entities. So I can take Avatar: The Way of Water and just simply drag and drop.
Awesome. Let's put Puss in Boots #2. I want to see that. And so what this is our search merchandiser. So this allows you to manually overwrite the search results and add business logic. So in this case, maybe we want to promote Avatar: The Way of Water. You can see how easy it was to just drag and drop that to the top of the search results. And now in the future, when someone searches for action movies, this is the results that they should see. Awesome. So that's looking pretty good. Let's check if our site deployed yet.
Sure. All right, back to deploys, and it looks like we're good to go.
Sweet. Let's check it out. All right, YMDB.
I got that right this time. Yeah.
Let's see if action movies gives us Avatar.
All right, Avatar showed up first.
Awesome. Let's check out. Can we click into Avatar? See what that looks like.
Sure.
Cool. This looks nice. And then we have the relationship to the actor. Awesome. Awesome. So that looks great. So now we have a page per actor, a page per movie, and a home page and a search page. It looks like we deployed overall 90 pages on this site. So that all worked really well. Now, do we want to try to make an update to something and show how that all flows throughout the system? Or do you want to set up let's set up the, no, before we do that, let's actually set up the Slack webhook. So one of the other things we want to showcase is every time when someone makes an update to the knowledge graph, let's just imagine that we want our content editing team to get a notification in Slack. Kind of an arbitrary use case, but maybe I want to see every time a movie changes. And so we're going to use a webhook to actually send a Slack notification every time content changes. So again, this is not built in natively to the Yext platform, but you can build this really easily on top of the platform. So what Aaron's doing here is he's creating a new app in our developer console, and he's going to hook up a webhook. So first he's giving this app API permissions, and then he's going to hook up a webhook that will automatically trigger a Slack notification.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm going to select the entities webhook type. That means that anytime there's an entity created or modified, I want that to trigger a Slack notification. So I'll click next. And I'm going to select a function. And this function is going to come from the same plugin that I uploaded that had the get genres function. But this time I'm going to use a different function called handle webhook.
And all this function's doing is taking the payload from Yext and then sending it to the Slack API.
Got to give it a name.
Awesome. So now we've hooked up. So we built this knowledge graph. We've hooked up pages. We've hooked up search. We've hooked up a content endpoint, and we've hooked up the Slack webhook. So we kind of have 4 different experiences that we're playing around with. Now, when you make updates to the knowledge graph, all of these downstream experiences are all hooked up and listen for updates. So we can make an update to the knowledge graph, maybe change something about a movie or something like that.
Sure. So let me see here. Now let's go over to movies and let's click on Avatar: Way of Water. And I thought, I haven't seen this movie yet, Max, but I've heard it's really long. So
it's like 5 hours long, but it's worth it. Good. It's good.
But I'm going to change the description to the longest movie ever. I'm pretty sure I added that as a field to the content endpoint, but I'll click save. I forgot to turn my notifications back on, but let's see if the webhook worked. So I'm going to jump over to Slack. And you can see I was testing this before, so there's a bunch of messages from before, but if you check the timestamp on this, it says sent today at 11:31 and the change field description. So the webhook did in fact work.
Awesome, awesome. So that's the Slack webhook firing. What about let's check out the pages site.
Sure. So if we go back over to the browser and then we go back to the Avatar: Way of Water. oops, I think that was,
Go back. Yeah.
and refresh the page. There we go. The description updated.
Awesome. And you want to show, and one of the cool things about this is if you go back to the actual platform itself, you can see every single data update we make to the page. So if you go to the deploys inside of the pages system, and you click on if you click on the data updates, you'll see the actual underlying data updates. And then you can actually view the details of one of them. If you just click on the view details, if you go back, you can actually see the exact data that changed. So this is really nice because every time content is changing on your website, we keep track of that. And we can actually show you every single change that's made. The cool thing also is that it's very easy to roll back with this kind of system. So we have a disaster recovery system where we can roll back to any point in time in the past and roll back the site really quickly. The final thing, it was really important that this site was performed well from an SEO perspective. Can we check out the page speed score of this page?
So let's quickly inspect and go to Lighthouse and let's analyze the page load.
Awesome. So page speed is really critical. Lighthouse is the best tool that's out there. It's not perfect, but it's a really good tool. And it will check how fast did the page load? Was it all marked up correctly? All that kind of stuff. You can see here we get a great page speed score. I would say, anything in the green is very good. Anything above 80 is probably better than most sites out there. So this gets a perfect score. This is obviously a pretty simple website, but it really highlights the infrastructure we have. Kind of out of the box, you're going to get really fast page loading speed. And that's because of the architecture of how we build pages. It's all done statically, so that when you are serving this page and a user visits this page, the HTML is ready to go. It doesn't need to hit a database. You don't have to have concerns about your database filling up or hitting server issues. We're just serving raw HTML over the wire every time someone visits the page, which is the most reliable system, especially for a content site like this. Awesome. So that was a lot we just showed. We showed how you could pull content from an API via our connectors framework. We pulled it all into a knowledge graph. We then built kind of 4 different experiences: a search experience, a website, a content endpoint, and then a Slack webhook notification. Everything you saw is running all on Yext infrastructure. So Aaron didn't need to spin up any other servers or anything like that. The actual site itself is hosted by our Pages product. The content endpoints, the functions that we uploaded, those are all hosted in the Yext system. So that really highlights all the different things that you can really build. And just that's an example, a pretty simple example of a movie website. But imagine trying to do all of that stuff in a different platform that you own, and compare and contrast how easy or hard that would have been. The nice thing about our platform is that you're able to do all of that from one central place. We didn't need to hook up a kind of a headless CMS to an ETL tool, to a website tool, to a search tool. All of those are integrated and kind of work nicely together. You have a great developer experience, and then you also have a great customer experience. So that balance is really what we're focused on overall on top of the Yext platform. Nick, I'll pass over to you to wrap us up, and then we can jump into some Q&A. If anyone has questions about what we covered, we'll definitely be sending a recording and open sourcing all the code. There was obviously a lot we covered, but definitely ask any questions people have.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. That was amazing. I really enjoyed hearing how much you loved Avatar: Way of the Water. Still haven't seen it. Probably not going to now that you've mentioned it so many times. So we do have one question in here, Aaron, asking about what are some of the tools that you use to when you're building something like this, and actually this is a good transition to this slide here. So maybe I'll let you just kind of talk through what are some of the things you think about, what are some of the places you go when you're building something like this.
Yeah, so the first place is definitely the Hitchhiker's website. We have some new learning tracks. I think that's a great place to get started learning about both pages, search, knowledge graph. And then as you're developing, being able to search for the different reference pages have been really helpful for me. I know that, for example, looking at like the search bar component reference page is really helpful for understanding how to pass different props to that component. And then whenever I've had kind of one-off questions that I maybe haven't found on hitchhikers, I've been able to ask questions in the community and get responses from the team super fast.
Awesome, thanks. So that was a good natural plug there for all the great content on the hitchhikers community. Highly recommend checking all of that out if you're interested in building things like this or building it all on top of the Yext platform. Yeah, so we can turn it over now to Q&A. If you do have any questions, feel free to plug them into the Q&A box. We've got a couple questions here. I've got one. As far as the strategy goes, when you're building something like this could be for Max or Aaron. What are some of the things that you think about when you're thinking about how the search product, pages product, all that interacts?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, we're really focused on delivering amazing experiences, right? And what makes an amazing experience? It's a variety of different factors. I think you really have to look at the leading consumer brands. What are the tools that people use all day? Because that's really what the bar is, right? So you think about companies or products like Spotify and Netflix and Airbnb and Google Search and Amazon Commerce and all these different tools. And they really have amazing digital experiences. And that's really what the bar is today. If you want to deliver a website or a search product or a mobile app or a chatbot or a voice skill, the bar is really high. And so you need to make sure you're building on the right infrastructure. You need to make sure you have a great developer experience so that your developers are really productive. You need to make sure that as you're serving up the experience, you have great infrastructure to build on. And when I say infrastructure, there's kind of a few different factors to that. There's one kind of reliability, uptime, speed, things like page speed really impacts there. The second also is the quality of like the AI and the machine learning models that you're using. Search, people expect natural language search and they expect it to be really fast. You need to have a provider that allows you to do that, or you need to build all that stuff yourself. What Yext tries to do is abstract away all of the kind of core infrastructure of what you definitely need, and then allows you to customize it on top. So that pages template, that was completely custom. That was just using standard React code. You saw there, both the search front end and the pages themselves. You saw how we layered on functions on top. So as you think about this, you want to pick and choose the right tools. You want to have, you're not going to build everything from scratch. You're not going to buy everything just completely working out of the box. You need some level of customization, but you also want to leverage some of the best tools you have out there. And that's kind of what we try to do at Yext. Depending on what you're trying to build, the tools and infrastructure you need are going to vary, but really focusing on the consumer experience or the user experience, that's the most important thing. Delivering a great user experience, or else people are just going to go away. And so that's what we really focus on here at Yext.
Awesome, thanks. We've got one question here. What happens if you're using already for your website, like a WordPress was the example using this question, but what if you're using another vendor or another platform and you've got your website built there?
Yeah, definitely. So a few different options there. So if you're using, when we showed that website, we were showing our pages product where we are hosting and serving the entire page, right? So we're basically the CMS, we're hosting the website. If you're using a different website provider like WordPress or someone else like that, you can still use the Yext knowledge graph. You're just going to be using it in a little bit more of what the industry calls a headless way. So instead of us building and serving the pages, you're going to pull the content out of Yext and then use your existing web provider to do that. There's two different ways architecturally you could do this. One is a push model where every time Yext updates, you would use that webhook to update some other database. That's one option. The other option is a pull model where you're going to use that content endpoint to pull in the data in real time. And if you're using something like WordPress or something like that, you can pull that content on the front end in real time and show that on the page and ensure that it's always kept up to sync. One of the problems we solve as a company is most businesses have a lot of different digital experiences, and it's hard to keep them all up to date. And that's where having a centralized knowledge graph can be really key. Now, the one caveat I'll say is that if you're using WordPress or Sitecore or any of those other vendors, in terms of stuff like page speed, we're not going to really be able to help there. We'll help in terms of getting the content, but if we're not serving the page, we can't help kind of at that lower infrastructure layer. So if you're just looking for keeping the content in sync, I would check out content endpoints or webhooks. If you actually want a full page that performs extremely well if you're struggling with kind of some of those more technical SEO basics, you're going to want to look into our entire pages product.
One other thing to mention there is from a search perspective, we can also easily add those search experiences to a website that's being powered by a WordPress or Adobe, things like that.
Awesome.
Those are all of the questions that we have here today. Anything that you want to wrap up with, Max or Aaron?
No, I hope everyone enjoyed going through this. There's obviously, we covered a lot and tried to highlight a bunch of different capabilities in the platform. It's certainly, if you have follow-up questions, definitely reach out to our team and we can do a demo. We're going to be opening sourcing all this code as well as giving you the video. So if you are interested in any of the code that we specifically showed is the front-end templates. So those are Pages React templates. We also showed off some custom functions. So those will also be in the code base. And then you can see the configuration around the schema and stuff like that we set up in the search experience as well. So there's a lot of details there. If you want to look through it in more granularity, we'll be exposing that. But I really appreciate everyone joining, and hopefully you learned a lot about some of the things you can do to build on top of our platform.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. I just want to echo that from Max. I wanted to quickly put up a couple of the events that are on demand, some of the fall release webinars that we've already held, and then we've also got our January release coming up. So a couple things to stay tuned for, but I wanted to thank our speakers once again and thank you all for joining. Everyone have a great day.